Are you anxious to see how a single Supreme Court decision could reshape the very foundation of American government? Welcome back to Universal Insight. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. On November 5, 2025, the Supreme Court will host a case unlike any in modern memory. The air in Washington, D.C. is thick with anticipation, as legal scholars, politicians, and citizens alike prepare for a day that could alter the course of American history. The stakes are enormous, and the eyes of the nation are fixed on the highest court in the land. For the first time, a sitting president, Donald Trump, may attend in person as the justices debate the very limits of his executive authority. The presence of a president at the heart of such a consequential legal battle is unprecedented, adding a layer of drama and gravity to the proceedings. The 9 justices, each with their own judicial philosophies and legacies, will weigh whether the president can unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs without congressional approval, a decision that could fundamentally redefine the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches, and set a precedent for generations to come. Inside the packed courtroom, and outside among crowds and reporters, the tension will be palpable. The outcome of this case will not only shape the future of U.S. trade policy, but could also reshape the very structure of American government, influencing how power is distributed and checked at the highest levels. The Trump administration argues for broad executive power, claiming the president must have the flexibility to act decisively in matters of national interest. Opponents, however, insist that only Congress has the constitutional authority to make such sweeping decisions, warning that unchecked executive power threatens the foundation of American democracy. As the world watches, this historic legal battle will unfold, not just in the courtroom, but across television screens and headlines around the globe. The decision will echo far beyond America's borders, signaling to the world how the United States defines the limits of presidential power in the 21st century. This Supreme Court showdown is the culmination of a series of bold and controversial moves that have shaken the foundations of U.S. trade policy. It all began with President Trump's aggressive America First trade agenda, which aimed to protect American industries and jobs by fundamentally rethinking the nation's approach to global commerce. In early 2025, the administration shocked the world by imposing a sweeping 10% tariff on all imports, a move that sent ripples through international markets. For major trading partners like China, Canada, and the European Union, tariffs soared to 50%, marking a dramatic and unprecedented shift away from decades of bipartisan support for free trade. To justify these sweeping tariffs, the administration invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, a law originally designed for targeted sanctions during national emergencies, not for broad economic measures affecting nearly every imported good. Critics from across the political spectrum argued that this was an unprecedented and dangerous expansion of presidential power, warning that it set a risky precedent. Lawsuits challenging the tariffs were filed almost immediately, with business groups, legal scholars, and even some lawmakers joining the fight. In a series of high-profile cases, lower federal courts sided with the challengers, ruling that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the authority to impose such broad and sweeping tariffs on foreign goods. The Trump administration, however, refused to back down. Officials argued that in a rapidly changing world, the president must have the flexibility to act decisively in order to protect national security and American interests, especially in times of economic uncertainty. Now, with the nation watching closely, the Supreme Court faces a historic decision. Will it uphold the president's sweeping use of emergency powers, or reaffirm Congress's constitutional authority over trade? The outcome will shape the balance of power for years to come. President Trump frames his argument as a matter of national survival. He claims the IEEPA gives the president the power to act swiftly against economic threats, protecting American industries and jobs. The administration projects trillions in economic benefits from the tariffs, arguing that waiting for Congress is too slow in a volatile world. They insist that economic security is national security, and that the president must have the tools to defend both. Trump warns that losing this case would leave America vulnerable and financially weakened. For the administration, this is about defending a strong, decisive presidency. Opponents counter that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs and regulate commerce. They argue the IEEPA was never meant to let presidents overhaul trade policy on their own. Allowing such power, they warn, would set a dangerous precedent, letting any president bypass Congress with a simple emergency declaration. The lower courts agreed, emphasizing the need for clear legislative authorization. The challengers urged the Supreme Court to reaffirm Congress's role and prevent an unchecked expansion of executive power. This case, they say, is about protecting the constitutional balance. The Supreme Court's ruling will have immediate, massive financial consequences, sending shockwaves through the entire U.S. economy. This isn't just a legal decision, it's a turning point that could reshape the financial landscape for years to come. Since the tariffs began, the Treasury has collected $158 billion, money that could have to be refunded if the court rules against the administration. That's a staggering sum, representing years of revenue that the government has come to rely on. Refunding it would be a logistical and financial challenge, potentially requiring new legislation and creating uncertainty for both businesses and taxpayers. Overturning the tariffs could create a $2.8 trillion hole in government revenue projections, forcing Congress to scramble for solutions. Lawmakers would face tough choices, whether to cut spending, raise taxes, or find alternative sources of income. The ripple effects could impact everything from infrastructure projects to social programs and even the national debt. Businesses would benefit from refunds, potentially boosting their bottom lines and encouraging investment. However, consumers, who've paid higher prices for goods due to the tariffs, would see little direct relief. The cost increases they've absorbed over the years are unlikely to be reversed, leaving many families still feeling the pinch. If the tariffs are upheld, the government keeps the revenue, but Americans continue to pay more for imports, and exporters face retaliation abroad. This could mean ongoing trade tensions, higher costs for manufacturers, and challenges for American products trying to compete in global markets. The stakes are enormous. The court's decision will either unwind a major economic program or cement it as the new normal. The outcome will influence not just government finances, but also the strategies of businesses, investors, and everyday Americans. The outcome will ripple through every corner of the economy, affecting jobs, prices, and the nation's financial future for years to come. As the nation awaits the Supreme Court's decision, the sense of anticipation is palpable. The ruling will set a precedent for presidential power and the future of American trade. Legal experts are divided, but many predict the court may side with Congress, limiting the president's authority. The decision could trigger economic and political shockwaves, forcing refunds and upending Trump's signature policy. If the court upholds the tariffs, it would mark a dramatic expansion of executive power. Ultimately, this case asks, should economic defense rest with a single executive, or with Congress? The Supreme Court's answer will define the boundaries of power in Washington for a generation.